Good morning. Welcome to another week of College Coffee Talk with your hosts, Pearl, that's her,
Hello.
and Andy Lockwood from Lockwood College Prep. Good morning. Got a timely show today, whether you're watching us live on our Facebook feed or I don't know where else this goes, TikTok.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Facebook. We're on Facebook.
And the podcast, which may not be so timely by the time you listen to it, but that's the College Admissions Edge podcast. We're talking about whether applying early decision hurts your chances of getting financial aid and scholarships. That is today's topic. So welcome. Let us know that you can hear us and see us in the chat. Let us know what questions you have. First, a synchronized coffee sip or whatever you're drinking. 1, 2, 3. Good morning. I always wonder who actually does that with us. Let us know. Let us know that too. So yeah, say hi, and we'll get right into it. So first of all, just as a background here, there's different ways to apply to college. There's early and there's regular. But within that early umbrella, there's a few different bits of terminology. So there's early decision, which is, and I'm talking about early decision 1, which deadlines are usually in November, like November 1 or November 15th. Some schools have earlier, but early decision is the quote-unquote binding way to apply to college. But we'll talk more about how it's not really binding. Then there's early action, which is not binding. And it's debatable whether there's a boost to your acceptance chances if you apply EA. And then there are these sort of hybrids, restricted early action, single choice early action, double secret platinum VIP, early super duper action. And for the most part, it varies whether those are binding or not binding. They tend to not be binding. You've got to really look at the actual words. That means, yes, reading the actual words of the college's terms on the website. So usually what a restriction means is that you can apply to that school. Let's say it's Princeton, which is, I think, single choice restricted early action. Maybe. I get them all mixed up. And you're allowed to also apply to a state university. It does not have to be limited to your state of residence. And that's it. And then the idea is you'll hear back earlier, usually December. And then at that point, you'll have a financial aid offer. But you are still allowed, if it's not binding, you're still allowed to have other applications go out to other schools and other financial aid applications go out to these same schools, and then figure it out in March once you hear back from all these other schools. So the question that we get a lot is, okay, so if early decision is binding, I'm going back to ED, is that going to hurt chances of aid, of my getting a full financial aid award? What are your thoughts first? Pearl Lockwood, who files financial aid applications for 400 plus families every year.
The short answer, or it's actually the seemingly evasive answer, is it could affect your admission. How much, how little, and of course, at the end of the day, if you need aid, you should apply for aid, because 75% of the students at any of these given universities receive aid, receive some discount off of the cost of attendance. And these schools have endowments that they must give away a certain amount every single year. So there is that in play altogether. And of course, there is submitting and of course, depending on what your financial package says, meaning if you have very high income, if you have very low income, there seems to be a lot of confusion on when to consider submitting financial aid forms or not.
Wait, don't get into that yet.
Okay.
Let's stick with the issue. So the issue is, if you apply early decision and you get in and you get a financial aid award, is that going to be the highest and best award that you could have gotten? Because the subtext is, if you get more awards, then maybe you can play them off against each other, but that's not the case when you apply early decision. So for the most part, colleges will claim that no, of course, if you apply early decision, we will consider you for the most amount of money that you could possibly get, and that goes for both need-based aid, which you get by filing the financial aid applications, the FAFSA, the CSS profile, etc., but also for schools that offer merit aid. They all pretty much claim that they're not going to be impacted by the fact that you applied early under the belief that your offer, that your acceptance is binding. In our experience, and this doesn't happen with every kid who applies for early decision and gets in, but in our experience, is it fair to say that we've seen a lot of movement after the fact with kids who don't apply for early decision, but very little, only rare occasional movement in terms of a revision when they do apply for early decision?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, she files a lot of financial aid applications. It's not like we file 10,000 a year and we can give you like a real, sample size. But in our anecdotal experience, the people who tend to apply to early decision and get financial aid awards have a harder time negotiating or appealing their financial aid awards and merit scholarship awards. So that is, I would say, for sure, that's the minority of people. I think in general, when you apply early decision, you get a fair financial aid award package.
Yep.
And occasionally we've been able to boost that when new information has come to light, to at least at the colleges they didn't know about. Like, for example, just to use a hypothetical that's based on real examples, if you are applying this year, you have someone who graduated, was about to graduate in 2025, and you're applying for financial aid now, October 2024, and it's based on your income from 2023, because it's a 2-year look back from your year of graduation to your tax returns. But the ensuing year, the interim year, 2024, was a much worse year, a much lower year. Those colleges won't know about it. So you can appeal your financial aid award based on new information, and that's sort of a classic, in the boxes appeal. My income dropped. You would know about this because it's based on 2 years ago. So if you apply early decision and you get in, and that's your situation, you probably have a decent shot at proving your award. But what you don't have are offers from other colleges.
Right. Because of the timing. Because if you hear back regarding admission in December and early decision in terms of commitments back to the school is not the same as regular decision. It is not May 1st. Rather, it's usually January.
Yeah.
Right.
So the timeline is like you apply in November, you hear back in December from the admissions office. Then a few days later, you should get a financial aid offer from the financial aid office. And then you usually have a couple of weeks, maybe to the beginning of January, to say, yes, I'm coming, or no, I'm not, or to try to negotiate or appeal the award. Then all the other information, like Pearl was saying, will come in, March and April.
Right. You will not have heard back from all of the regular decision schools at the time you need to make the decision based on the early decision acceptance.
Yeah. So we don't love it from a financial aid standpoint. I think that's the bottom line, but it's not.
But however, I definitely do not want to gloss over this important point. But if you apply early decision and you do not get a good financial package, you have an out of that binding early decision commitment because you reject, you don't like, subjectively, in your opinion, your family doesn't like that financial aid package. And that is perfectly legitimate. You have an absolute right to get out of your of your early decision commitment if you do not like your financial aid package.
So let me add to that, because this is the most important point I wanted to make sure we covered today. So you heard it plain and simple, but let me give you a few comments on it. First of all, you'll never hear this from your guidance counselor, because they don't want you to somehow taint next year's class of kids who apply to whatever school. You invoke your financial out.
You have different agendas. Your students and your guidance counselor have different agendas.
And I will say virtually every high school has some sort of lore about how, we haven't had a kid get into Duke in 12 years because 12 years ago, Johnny Bag of Donuts applied and got in early decision and then decided not to go. So that is almost I can almost guarantee you that is categorically false, because admissions officers really don't care, especially at the elite schools, if you invoke your financial out. That is written right in there in the agreement. So the first point I want to make is that is lore, that is false. You talk to any admissions officer about this, and they'll say, they should say, yeah, you have that right. If you don't like the financial aid award, you can get out of it. But don't just take their word for it. Look at the actual financial aid. I'm sorry, the verbiage about financial aid in the early decision agreement. So I'm going to paraphrase it, but basically it says, you're applying early decision, it is binding. You are coming if we accept you, unless the financial aid offer does not make it possible, or is not adequate, or something like that, for you to come, for you to attend. And then, I just want to pick apart what Pearl said. There's no objective standard about whether the financial aid offer makes it, allows you to come or not, makes it possible for you to come or not. It is solely up to you. You are sole judge and sole jury. You don't have to answer to anyone. You can invoke your out. Yeah. So, plus, okay, your kid who files for applies to college, usually they're under the age of majority when they apply, so they lack the legal capacity to form a contract. That's another reason why no one can force you to go. And then the obvious reason is no one can force you to go. No one can force you to go to a certain college and pay a certain amount. That's just not, that's just not legal. So don't be afraid to apply early decision because you think you can't get out of it. You can get out of it. And I think in reality,
but to preserve that right, you have to file your financial aid forms.
Sure. Yeah. Right. You can't say we didn't get an award that makes it possible for us to attend if you didn't try. Right?
Exactly.
So that's a good point. You have to connect the dots here.
Yeah.
So that's super important.
Otherwise, it's a specious argument.
Nice.
So to speak.
Nice. Such SAT vocab. There's no more words, vocabulary words in the SAT though. But still great. So I want to talk a little bit about the timing of doing that also, because we talk about this example all the time. We had a client who got in years ago, early decision to Northwestern, and they looked at a CSS profile that the Pearl filed, and they ended up giving 0. And we tried to appeal because the family owned a lot of real estate, but our argument was, look, even though you own a lot of real estate, we owe a lot too, and if we were to sell everything tomorrow, we might have to come to the table with money, maybe not realize proceeds from selling that real estate. And Northwestern said, no, 0. So the family agonized, and then they said, okay, we're coming. They're prepared to pay full price. They're going to borrow all sorts of money. Mm-hmm. So that was December a few years ago. Yeah. It probably carried up till January. Mm-hmm. Then I think March comes around, and they hear back from University of Michigan.
Right.
Yeah, because they'd already previously applied early action
to
University of Michigan, right. And Michigan looked at the same CSS profile, which is another topic, right? And gave almost a full ride. Yeah. Like I think they had to pay $15,000 or something
a year.
To go, right?
Amazing.
And the kid got into engineering programs in both schools. Yeah. So the dad calls Pearl up and says, "What do I do?" And she and I are talking, like, "What do you mean? What do you do? You get out of it? I mean, come on. Is it really worth paying an extra $80,000 a year or whatever it was at the time to go to Northwestern as opposed to Michigan in engineering?" So this was like a back and forth. I don't know. I don't feel good. My guidance counselor said no. And I said, look at the agreement. I even called, even though this happens maybe every other year, not every year. I called a colleague of mine who's on the admissions committee at Princeton for 30 years, and he knows more. He's forgotten more about college than I'll ever know. And I said, is there ever any issue? And he said, no, it's right in the agreement. It's not like Northwestern's going to tell Michigan that they applied early decision, or there's any other types of repercussions. And so lo and behold, after all this agonizing, they said, okay, we're going to ask them to get out of the agreement, and they screwed up the courage to together call up admissions at Northwestern, and they said, listen, we'd like to be released, even though they already accepted it. We would like to be released on the grounds of the financial aid award not being adequate. And the admissions officer at Northwestern said, okay, and that was it. It was so inconsequential, and that's the way it always goes. Yep. So don't be afraid to apply early decision if you're nervous about being able to afford that at college. I mean, don't apply just for the heck of it. because you know you can't afford it, but which I think is a fair point that guidance counselors make. But don't think that you're locked in to making a $300,000 forced decision right there. Any questions?
Yes, I wanted to clarify something because somebody's not quite getting what we said here.
Well, read the question.
Once accepted to a school, can you negotiate a tuition discount if you did not apply for financial aid? No.
Well, no. Well, what if you're getting married though?
Not with financial aid form. Yes, you can, but that's
if it's a merit-based award.
Merit-based only.
Yeah, and if you got 0 for merit, chances are you can't negotiate from 0.
Right.
Yeah.
But you want to protect your ability to get merit aid by filing financial aid forms, because there are many schools that won't consider you your applicant for merit-based awards if they have not filed financial aid forms.
All right, so good morning to Kellyanne, Patrick, Michelle, Dr. Michelle. Hopefully not mid-operation or something. I don't think she operates, but good morning to Chris. Good morning to Bonnie. Good morning to Sasha, Candida, Christy, Michelle. Michelle's daughter had a really quick college acceptance, it seemed like within hours of submitting, and she's like, "Am I reading this right? Is this a full ride?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's a full ride." Awesome. Congratulations, Margarita, Dawn, Kieran, Erin, Beth, Gabriella, Joanna, our client. Good morning, Joanna. Deborah, Maria, our client also, and our colleague Gary. A lot of parents are concerned that if you decline an ED acceptance, ED school will trash you at other schools. No, that is not. I agree with you, Gary. That is not the case. Colleges have better things to do.
Right.
Got it. So you just answered Eva's question about once accepted, can you negotiate if you didn't apply? You're the only people, Gary. You're the only people I have ever met who know anyone not from Michigan who got a dime from Michigan if they could not score touchdowns or hit a 3-pointer. That is very funny. Our daughter actually got I wish it was more, but she got a little bit of merit money from Michigan, and I'm still shocked about that. Yeah. Yeah, Michelle. She did a great job. You're welcome. And Kathy says hi. Are there any other related topics here that we need to talk about? What about just the idea of this is related, but the idea of you don't think you're going to qualify for aid. One of the reasons to apply is the college might require for merit aid. That's one thing. Another thing that someone asked me about the other day
me too.
was,
well, I don't know what you're about to say.
Then why don't you listen? What do you want to say? Go ahead.
No, please go right ahead.
You're a little under the weather. I feel bad for you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, and this is a returning client, and she said, there's no way, they're going to qualify for aid because he has a 7-figure income. He's got all these properties. Really great story, by the way. Came here from Ireland with nothing in his pocket, and created a whole business for himself. Went to trade school. Yeah. So, and we were talking about, well, what if things go south, and all of a sudden you need money and you need to borrow? Talk about that.
Yep, we had a client where this happened a couple of years ago because we all lived through COVID a couple of years back, and when the financial, so basically the year before COVID, financial aid forms, well before we had any idea that COVID was going to be what it was, this family, self-employed,
software business.
Right, software business.
One huge client.
One huge client. They did not file financial aid forms by the time COVID struck, and they needed money to pay for the school year they were then in because they lost that client, and now they went to 0.
It was like 70% of their business.
Exactly. They wanted to borrow to just shore up the cash bleeding in their household, and borrow and not have to take another 80 grand to pay Northeast.
Yeah.
And
they were late,
and the school said, no.
It was like 3 days
late. You're too late.
Right?
You missed the deadline, which are pretty generous at the federal level.
Yeah.
But
it was like June or something.
Just you just never know what's going to happen. And you just don't know what the market may do. For example, let's just say, and I'm not a financial advisor, but I just hypothetically, if you have something invested and it's doing wildly well, there's some stocks out there that are really going through the roof.
And then there's an election.
There's an election. But
Or
let's
a war,
just say, or
or a
maybe your
terrorist.
job is vulnerable and
Yeah.
you don't want to pull
Yeah.
from your own resources to the tune of 80 grand a year to fork over to a school when you have the borrowing option at, it's not fabulous, but for this year, it's 9% for parents. But if you have other assets that are making you more than that, for example, you may not want to touch it or whatever, you get the point. You always want to preserve the opportunity to borrow. And especially in that case, unfortunately, that family was shut out until the following aid year to have any borrowing opportunity.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure it was just a matter of days.
It was.
That they were, by the time they contacted us.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, let's try to go back and see. And they didn't. So it's one of these like black swan type of arguments. You don't know what's around the corner. You might as well file because A, you don't know if you're going to qualify or not if you're not an expert. B, you might have to be considered for merit aid. C, it could if you are very successful financially, it'll show financial strength,
right,
which could give you a boost of getting in. And D, what Pearl just said, if something happens that's unexpected, like something that shakes the markets, like we don't have this soft landing or whatever, and there's all these layoffs, and who knows. It preserves your ability to be able to borrow if you need it. You're not committing to borrowing until you actually fill out the Parent Plus loan application, which Pearl does, and it takes all 30 seconds. And I've seen you do some amazing things with people that should not have been able to get any type of money. We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we should wrap up here. Consider this the last of the last calls for questions. I see a couple coming in here, so great. Gabrielle says so much great info. Thank you, and go blue. Funny.
Yes.
Gary says, "Wow, I'm shocked too." Yeah, good for her.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was weird. I've seen it every once in a while. We see some kids get merit aid for special programs like nursing or something, but anyway, didn't go that far.
They
But
were
it was nice. It it paid for most of the MDen purchases. Probably not. Of swag. All right. 99. I was told by fellow parents no one is giving merit scholarships anymore. Not true. Even when you are lower income, we are in New York State, that makes a difference. It doesn't. No. I'm a single mom with one income. Daughter has a 97 average, no SATs yet. She's a junior. Is it true that is rare? No, what that depends on where you apply.
Right.
Most of the colleges in the country will give money. Most of them, not will give merit aid. Not the top 30 colleges necessarily, which are mostly need-based, but most of the other colleges will. Kellyanne, I noticed a college my daughter's interested in is offering $20,000 if students apply early decision. Is this legit? Renewable? Interesting. Yeah. Who knows? It's probably legitimate. It is probably not renewable. Check the terms though. Right. I doubt that's renewable.
Exactly.
Dr. Michelle, what do colleges do with the retirement account money? They take it from you. No, okay. It's not supposed to count against you.
And I have not seen that it does.
Yeah. I've heard some anecdotal things before where we had a client who, and this so Pearl's right. But I remember a couple of years ago, we had a client who was trying to get more money, and the stupid person in the financial aid office said, "Well, you've got $1 million in retirement. You don't need it. You don't need the money from us." So they weren't counting it against her, except when we tried to appeal. It was
wow.
That is unusual.
May I speak with your supervisor?
Yeah, exactly. Michael Kaukas, if FAFSA forms aren't available until December 1st, how do the schools offering early decision turn around the aid that quickly?
Okay, so for many early decision schools,
probably all
require the CSS profile, which is a much more detailed, covers at least what's in the FAFSA and some. They will, this is how the schools will handle it. They're going to offer what's called a provisional award, subject to once the FAFSA is submitted, if that changes vastly from what was submitted in the CSS profile, which it should not. Usually those awards are just going to be based on the CSS with the FAFSA rubber stamping it because of this unintended delay in the FAFSA yet again this year. So that is how it's going to play out.
Oh, great. Carolyn, our client Carolyn, if applying early action and CSS is required, how to handle the X's part? Well, it's the same way, right?
Yes. Yeah. So if if you're speaking about an uncooperative, potentially ex-spouse participation in the financial aid process, you have to play the hand you're dealt, and you cannot, make the sun into the moon and the moon into the sun. No one's expecting you to, including the schools. If there is no participation and it's a school that requires the non-custodial parents' financial information and that is a small subset of all the schools. There are about 4,000 or so schools out there. Those require the FAFSA. They all take the FAFSA. A subset of those 4,000, approximately 400 or so, require the CSS profile. And then a subset of those CSS profile requiring schools require the non-custodial parents' financial information as well. So, but if you are applying to such a school and you cannot get that non-custodial parents' participation, then you would fill out what's called the non-custodial parents profile waiver of that information, which comes along with, you basically detailing and documenting the lack of participation, the lack of contact. You will often need to supply third-party letters just acknowledging they understand that this is in fact the nature of this relationship, no more.
The guidance counselor.
Like a guidance counselor, like a clergy, like a psychologist, like a physician, something along those lines. But you can't get blood from a stone. So don't sweat it. If you can, you can. And if you can't, they're just going to have to issue a financial aid package based on the information they have.
When you said you can't turn the sun into the moon and the moon to the sun, A, I've never heard that from you. And B, I thought you were going to say, you can't turn the sun into, like some song or something.
But I didn't.
No, you didn't. Yeah. Full surprises today. All right. Great answer there. Gary says, I think MDEN closed recently. I will show you. It
has gone bankrupt.
I will show you our credit card statements.
But there's, getting rid
of. We were
just
just there, yeah. So
the last bits.
So what
we had trouble finding a Michigan dad hat. We did.
Thank God. We were just there. Yeah. So what did we do? We went to the other one.
We went to the other merch place, and there's still stuff.
Don't worry, there's plenty of stuff to buy, Gary. Don't worry.
I wouldn't even say slim pickings yet.
It's oh my God, it's overwhelming. I got like a migraine going in this. All the maize and blue. Ava says you were awesome. You're welcome. Kelly is saying the $20,000 offers from WPI. Kellyanne, very interesting. Maria, do any colleges start their application review before the deadline? Generally, no, with some exception, like maybe Wake Forest will review before the early decision application deadline. Mm-hmm. And of course, the rolling schools, which don't really have deadlines. Nice question. Nice to have you back from Greece for a few days before you return again. She's on like the Greece frequent flyer plan. The way that we go, maybe to the Hamptons or something. Yeah. Gary says call the admissions officer at, I guess, WPI. Mm-hmm. Gabriella, if all assets, stocks, etc., are in retirement accounts, are those reported anywhere?
In retirement on the CSS profile,
but not
only and nowhere on the FAFSA.
Yeah, it's not supposed to penalize you.
Nope, and it shouldn't.
Bruce Voss, what happens if CSS profile is submitted, but by the time the FAFSA becomes available, we had to amend our 2023 tax return? Which return do we submit to FAFSA? You don't submit any return to FAFSA. You press a button and it gets uploaded.
Right, but you will be likely required, if you have submitted the CSS profile, to, through either IDOC or through the school's own methodology, transport your 2023 tax return. So if you've amended the return by the time you need to do that, then you will also need to go back into your already submitted CSS profile, and there's an opportunity to say, make a correction. And then you can specify the area that needs correction and just a brief statement about what needs to be fixed or what the error was in the original submission.
Nina says she didn't have all of her coffee before she wrote her question. You need to get up earlier and brew it earlier. That's not the question. IBs and financial aid and merit scholarships, do they give them? Technically, they only give need-based. They don't give any scholarships. We've seen
Otherwise in very extenuating special circumstances.
Gary's done with merch. You're never done. It's for professional reasons. Gary's a financial advisor. And hello, Stacy. Hello, Christine. And last question or comments. Here we go. Gabriella, thank you. You guys are awesome for holding these opportunities for us. It's our pleasure.
Pleasure, really.
Yeah.
This is a lot of fun. Oh my God.
And I know that we get, this is the time of year where sort of like peak neuroses season, for the next, I'd say 30 to 45 days. And it's so hard to get this information from your high schools and all that. So that's the biggest reason why we do this.
Yeah.
So good. All right. Thanks for the feedback. You're going to go do some work?
I'm going to go do some work. And if you have subjects and topics that you would like us to talk about, please put it in your comments here so that we know and we can address them next week or some point.
If you're watching this or listening to this or whatever, wherever you're watching this, whatever platform on replay, we'll answer those questions too. Have a great week and take it easy. It's all going to work out. If you have a senior and you're having trouble breathing, do that or get a brown bag, whatever it takes, it'll work out. Have a good week.
Bye.